In this video, I'm exploring the Mississippi River Trail to Nauvoo, Illinois, and then the Mormon Trail from Nauvoo, Illinois to Lewis, Iowa. So I hope that if that interests you, you'll come along. I've been following this guide from the National Trail System. It's put out by the National Parks Service, and this is the one that uh, tracks the Mormon Pioneer Trail across Iowa in 1846. So I'll be starting in Nauvoo, Illinois, and then I'll take us through as far as Lewis, Iowa, and then after that I'm going to head south and join the Oregon Trail at Kearney, Nebraska. Um, the Mormon Trail, well, the Vanguard Trail, that's the one that was the very first group that set out, uh, didn't follow that Oregon Trail route. I think from what I've read, the Mormon travelers were a little apprehensive about being in that close proximity with other travelers because of the persecutions they had experienced. Um, so they stayed on the opposite side of the river through Nebraska. Um, but anyway, there's some history here. This book is fabulous, and it's really handy. I had no idea that there was a separate trail. Um, and so anyway, I wanted to read you a little excerpt. Um, Mormons, as Latter-day Saints are popularly called, practice a religion that arose in 1830 from the teachings of church founder Joseph Smith. Early converts to the new faith followed their prophet from New York to Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois through the 1830s and 40s. They were driven from each state by threats and violence. The reason for the Latter-day Saints' early troubles still are debated, but religious, political, economic, and social practices were all at issue, and it caused them to move on. I like this quote, why is it that so many professing Christianity and so many professing to reverence the sacred principles of our Constitution, which gives free religious toleration to all, have slandered and persecuted this sect of Christians? It was from an unknown correspondent writing for a local Illinois Courier newspaper in June of 1841, led Missouri, whose governor had ordered the Mormons to leave or be exterminated. They found refuge in Illinois, where an advance group of Latter-day Saints had prepared a new town site. There, in a horseshoe bend of the Mississippi River, they built up the settlement of Nauvoo, meaning the beautiful place, and began work on a stately limestone temple. So there's more history here, but I'd like to share it as we go through my visit of Nauvoo, and then, on to Lewis, Iowa, which is where I will end their journey. But they kept going, and we'll reconnect with them on the original Oregon Trail. Before we get to Nauvoo, I forgot along the route that followed the Mississippi, which is also called the Great River Road, I came upon this beautiful covered bridge. It's called the Henderson County Covered Bridge, and it's one of 9 covered bridges still standing in Illinois, according to coveredbridges.net. So it's a beautiful example of the construction of that period, and I just love the sign. Here's the map that I picked up in Nauvoo, and it's a big map. I tried to include it in the video, but in any case, I didn't hit just a quarter of the sites, and where I stayed was at the Baxter Vineyard. It's the oldest vineyard in Illinois, has an interesting history. So that was a Harvest Host site that I was able to stay at. Lovely place, good wine. And then the rest of the sites were all on the historic um, Church of the Latter-day Saints properties. So hopefully I can kind of convey what those were um, through the video and photos. A note though, they would not let me take video inside any of the buildings, nor could I record any of the talks that they gave, which were informative. And then lastly, my battery died when I was in um, Joseph Smith's uh, first residence, and throughout that whole tour, I couldn't record anything because my phone was dead. So sorry we missed that, but hopefully you'll get something good from this. All right. I visited for 1 day, but this wasn't nearly long enough. I would recommend at least 2 days. I managed to see the Joseph and Emma Smith homestead, the Mansion House, the Pioneer Memorial and Exodus to Greatness, the Scoville Bakery, the 70s Hall, the Smith Family Cemetery, the Trail of Hope, wagon tour of Old Nauvoo, which I did not ride. Baxter's Vineyards, the oldest winery in the state of Illinois, is a small family winery located in the historic town of Nauvoo. The winery was established in 1857 by Emily and Annette Baxter. They participate in the Harvest Host program, and they were kind enough and graciously allowed me to stay on their property. It was beautiful. This is one of two remaining original temple sunstones. To early church members, the sun breaking through clouds symbolized the dawning of the restoration and the coming of gospel light to illuminate a dark earth. These were featured prominently on the Nauvoo temple. Above each sun are two hands holding trumpets, heralding the dawning of the gospel. The walls of the temple featured 30 pilasters, each with a moonstone at the base and a sunstone at the top. The first stone was 6 feet high and 6 feet 6 inches wide, and was installed on September 23 of 1844. This was the second temple constructed on this site in Nauvoo. The first was damaged by arson and then a tornado before being demolished. The new church was rebuilt in 2002. Its exterior is a replica of the original. This model displays the bend in the Mississippi River where Nauvoo was established. These are likenesses of the brothers Hiram and Joseph Smith. The modern temple, built in 2002, I wasn't allowed inside. This is the carriage depot where horse-drawn carriage rides are given free to view all of the sites in the historical city. Here I'm walking to some of the historic sites in Nauvoo. The Saints arrived in 1839 and they left in 1846, so it's pretty significant the amount of construction and what they completed during that small time. Coming up to the Cultural Hall, this was a 3-story building built in the early 1840s and served as the community's cultural center. It was dedicated by Hiram Smith in 1844, and it was the tallest building in Nauvoo until the temple. On to the Scoville Bakery, which was built in 1843. The small size of the ovens in the building suggests that baking was done elsewhere, and this was more of a retail shop. The profits from goods sold here helped to build the cultural hall. The three young women that I met inside were all on mission in Nauvoo, and they were from different places around the United States. It was interesting to speak with them. The mechanism that opened and closed this gate was interesting. It had a weighted ball on the end of it. It just shows the ingenuity of the time. This building was called the Joseph and Emma Smith Mansion House. This was the second living quarters for the family. The original homestead that they lived in when they arrived in Nauvoo was already built, and they purchased it from another gentleman. This building also served as an inn. This red brick building I'm coming up to, and actually this is the rear view of the building. You can kind of see the Mississippi River over to the right there. This was supposed to be the hotel, but it was never finished during Joseph Smith's time. The building was eventually completed by Louis Bidamon, who was Emma Smith's second husband. And across the street is the original homestead. It was built on to two additional times to accommodate the growing community. Joseph, Emma, and their four children moved into the log cabin that you can see here across the street in May of 1839. They purchased the home from Captain James White. They added on several times because this home was used as community center, hospital, and inn until the other mansion was built. Okay, so this is the beginning of the Trail of Hope, where the Mormon overlanders departed for Salt Lake, or at the time they didn't know they were going to Salt Lake, but just following through Iowa and then hooking up with the Oregon Trail. This is, they had to leave the city and all they had built. And cross the Mississippi into Montrose. Montrose, Iowa. Hi. Good. How about you? Okay, so driving down the Great River Road just outside of Nauvoo, heading south to cross the Mississippi in Keokuk, you come to this stone arch bridge in Nauvoo. It was built around 1850, and it spans a drainage ditch created by early pioneers to manage water runoff and prevent the area from becoming a swamp. It's a historical landmark reflecting the town's rich heritage, architectural craftsmanship, and engineering. A little background history on why this structure was necessary. When Hiram and Joseph Smith arrived in the area, it was thought that the land was basically swamp and not suitable for building on. However, they soon realized that the swampy land was more due to runoff because the upper lands were limestone and rain would just run off and pool in this area. So they corrected the problem and they began building. this is where the Mormons would have landed after they crossed the Mississippi. Let's see if I can capture the temple. Straight across. Right there. It's pretty windy. But otherwise a beautiful day. I'm trying to imagine what it was like for them. This is Montrose Riverfront Park. Another view of the temple from across the Mississippi in Montrose, Iowa. Also in Riverfront Park is this plaque that commemorates the location of the old Fort Des Moines and the place where Mormons initially settled in Iowa while creating Nauvoo across the river. Because the fort had been abandoned before Brigham Young and others arrived in early 1839, numerous families, including that of Young, temporarily took shelter in the vacant barracks here. The fort was established in May of 1834 as Camp Des Moines by Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Watts Kearny, 1st U.S. Dragoons, to control and protect the Sac and Fox Indians. It was abandoned in June of 1837. The fort site became the town of Montrose. After being camped at Sugar Creek from February through March 1st, they left and arrived in Bonaparte. In 1846, Bonaparte had 40 to 50 houses and a fine flour mill. Brigham Young crossed the Des Moines River near Bonaparte on a ferry on March 5th. Eliza R. Snow wrote about the crossing in her journal. Sister Markham and I are nicely seated in an ox wagon on a chest, with a brass kettle and the soap box for our footstools, thankful that we are off so well. The day is fine. The Mormons had their grain processed at grist mills in Bonaparte. Today, Bonaparte Retreat, located in an 1878 grist and flour mill, is one of the region's best restaurants, and Bonaparte is listed in the Register of Historic Places, along with Bonaparte's historic 1920s bandshell, which is also listed on the register. As I'm viewing the river, I'm just imagining what it was like when Brigham Young led the maiden voyage of Mormon Trail pioneers, roughly 3,000 people in 500 wagons across the Des Moines River at this little village of Bonaparte. Between the Des Moines River crossing and the Nishnabotna River crossing, there were other crossings and camps that the Mormon pioneers made. I just didn't visit those. And leading up to the Missouri River, where they winter quartered. But you can read more about that in the National Historic Trails Auto Tour Route Interpretive Guide. You can pick it up for free. crossing of the Nishnabotna marks the meeting of two refugee peoples, the Latter-day Saints and the Potawatomi Indians. The Potawatomi remained in the area only during 1846, while the Latter-day Saints, on their way to Council Bluffs or points farther west, would continue to travel across the area for some time. A cheaper form of travel began in 1856 with the hand cart, and this continued through 1860. It was less expensive than buying a wagon, but it was much harder travel. I read that the hand carts are made almost entirely of wood and were modeled after carts used by street sweepers. The Nishnabotna Ferry House is an historic building located in Lewis, Iowa. The 1.5-story frame Greek Revival structure was the home of Samuel Harlow Teft, who operated the cable ferry across the river from 1857 to 1859. The road that the ferry served was originally an Indian trail that became a primary route used by western-bound immigrants, a stagecoach and mail route, the Underground Railroad, and later a Mormon Trail and the Mormon handcart companies. Since I was in Lewis, I decided to visit the Hitchcock House. It's just across the river, which I crossed via bridge. The house sits on a beautiful promontory overlooking a big bend in the East Nishnabotna River. The house is built of brown sandstone taken from Jester's Quarry, which is still visible near the road going south out of Lewis. Originally, it is thought that a large hinged cupboard separated the two rooms in the basement. To gain access to the secret room, parts or all of the cabinet may have swung open. Here, fugitive slaves would have hidden in times of danger or rested from their long journey from Kansas territory. No records remain of any slaves coming through the house or how they were concealed. It was a federal offense to shield or aid fugitive slaves. The Mormon Trail through Iowa took approximately 105 days, covering about 260 miles from Sugar Creek to the Missouri River at Council Bluffs. The journey occurred during the spring of 1846. Brigham Young led that first pioneering group of Mormons 1,300 miles from Nauvoo, Illinois to Salt Lake City. I won't be joining them on the whole journey, but I will catch up with them again in Wyoming. Until next time, happy trails.